Hi, everyone. Ed Bixby here from the Global Green Burial Alliance, and this is Spotlight Now. Today, I'm here with Jill McClennen. Jill is a certified death doula, grief coach, and educator dedicated to changing the way we approach death, dying, and grief. She provides emotional and practical support for individuals facing the end of life as well as their families, offering guidance through the dying process and helping people navigate grief with greater clarity and resilience. Through her coaching, workshops, and community programs, Jill creates a space for deep conversations and healing. Jill is also the host of Seeing Death Clearly podcast, where she explores end of life topics with guests, sharing insights on mortality, grief, and meaningful living. She leads educational sessions on death care planning, resilience in grief, and supporting caregivers, empowering people to approach death with more confidence and understanding. Additionally, she designs death positive apparel to encourage open discussions about mortality. Jill's work is rooted in the belief that embracing death can help us live more fully. So, welcome, Jill.
Thank you so much, Ed. I'm really happy to be here with you this morning.
We're very happy to have you. So, why don't we get started by learning more about what got you in the funeral industry and inspired you to become a death doula?
I am originally from South Jersey, but I was living in California for quite a few years and decided to move back home to South Jersey to live with my grandmother. She was turning 90, still lived in her house that my grandfather built for her when they got married. So she'd been there for like 70 something years and did not want to leave. And my husband and we used to be pastry chefs, both of us. So we were like, we'll move back home to Vineland and we'll open a bakery and we'll live with grandma. And so the last 4 years of her life, we found out she had cancer not too long after we moved home. And so I really was like day in, day out, like living with her, caring for her. And the last couple of weeks of her life, when she was on hospice, I really realized, first off, how little I understood what was going on. We should have gotten hospice involved earlier, but nobody told us. Even looking back now, we probably should not have done some of the surgeries and the radiation and the things that we were doing on a 90-year-old. We probably should have just let her kind of like live life and not go through really what ended up being the thing that ended up killing her was, the side effects of some of those treatments. And so I really loved the support of hospice. I could not have done it without hospice. And so that kind of started me down this journey of, well, maybe I want to be a hospice nurse. I really think that's a beautiful profession, but I didn't really want to go back to school to be a nurse. I had a young baby at the time. Life just kind of moved on for a little bit. And so about 10 years after she died is when I heard of death doulas. And then when I heard it, I was like, oh, that's the thing. That's what I want to do. And at that point, I was, my children were getting older. I was in a better position to kind of start down a new path. And so that's been 5 years now since I started working on my certification and getting my business started and just kind of doing the whole thing. And I've really enjoyed working in my community, doing classes and seminars and educating the community and talking to people and volunteering in hospitals. And so I really love this space. It's something that I think I was born to do. I just didn't know about it until I was in my mid-40s.
Well, that's kind of ironic. I think that happened to a lot of us that are in this natural burial movement and death doula movement. You find yourself caring for someone you love. You do, like you said, you make decisions what you feel is best. Education and transparency is key. So,
Mhm.
we understand things better, unfortunately, sometimes after we've experienced it. So it sounds very admirable what you did, and I'm glad that life, brought you on this path. I work with many hospice care workers, and you're right, they're great people, and that really brings you closer to home. So, great. I'm so glad that you chose this path, Jill. And you talked a little bit about, what you're providing, but if you could tell us a little bit more, like, so what services would you provide with end of life clarity? Let's say, for instance, if we were to call you up, I know you do the podcast and all those, but could you just explain to the viewers a little bit about end of life clarity and what you provide to the consumer?
Yeah, well, it's tricky because the more that I've been doing this, the more I realize you're not just going to be sitting bedside with somebody, that's not going to be the main part of your job as a death doula. First off, you just can't take that many clients that way. You would burn out, they would overlap, it just would be exhausting. And so I'm really getting a little bit more into the space of helping people at all stages of life, including people like me. I'm midlife, I'm pretty healthy, my husband's pretty healthy, but we don't know. We don't know when something will happen. And I really want to make sure that more people are prepared for the end of life whenever it happens to us, whether it's an illness or an accident. And so I've been trying to work more with people that are not necessarily sick, they're not necessarily dying, but getting prepared for what they want if there is an illness, because you don't want to wait until you find out that you have cancer to decide necessarily like what you want to do, when too much treatment might be too much. You don't want to know that that's when you have to ask all these questions because you're in that moment. And so let's talk about it now. And I found that we live our life better if we do get prepared. You're able to be more present. So many people avoid this topic, and that's one of the biggest things, whether it's in public or online. People say to me, well, I don't need your services, I'm not dying. I'm like, well, we kind of all need to do this because we're all dying, right? We just don't know when it is. And so I do work with people at the end of life, but I really am trying to get more into working with people, just preparing for it whenever it is. So it's emotionally, spiritually, even physically. I'm not a lawyer, I can't do your will, but I want to make sure all those things are in place and find out where it is and where the copies are. And let's have conversations with your family. I can kind of help mediate a conversation after we get all these things in place and you're really clear about it. Then we still need to talk to people about it, but that can be uncomfortable. And we have a lot of resistance to those conversations. So I like to help mediate the conversation and be on a Zoom or even in person with families and just saying, hey, I talked to whoever it is, and this is what we talked about, and this is what they care about, and this is the information we want you to know. And of course, educating the community. I love to do classes, whether it's at my local library or on Zoom. I do even work with a local law office where we go into the community and we do education, because that really is the biggest thing, because we don't talk about death and dying in a normal, natural way. Most of us really don't understand the realities of it. And so again, then somebody ends up in the hospital and they say, well, I want everything. And I'm like, well, do you even know what everything means? Do you understand what that looks like? Do you understand what that's going to be like? And then I'll talk to them and then I'll say, well, why didn't anybody explain it to me this way? I'm like, I don't know, but that's why I'm here to help explain things in a way that is normal language so that people can understand it and then make educated decisions. You can't make an educated decision if you don't understand what you're talking to somebody about. And doctors, I mean, they speak like doctors, which is okay, but most of us don't understand what they're even saying to us. That's a lot of what I try to do for people.
That's wonderful. And let me tell the viewers, you're raising the bar, because I don't think people, when they think of a death doula, they even think of that. Like you had mentioned, they're thinking of contacting them at the time of need, but you're so on the money. You're so correct. And letting, educating, the transparency, the discussion, creating the opportunity, even if they don't use your services in the future, you've done your part. You've led them, in the right direction. And I think that's what's most important. So I commend you for that. And any death doulas out there listening to this, follow Jill's lead. That's where it's at. When in the cemetery business, what I try to do is not sell something to anyone. I'm there to educate them and let them know what their options are, and they're better for it. So great job, Jill. I really appreciate that answer. And with that being said, with your actual death doula services, and I know you do green services as well. Do you do all types of funeral arrangements, or is it just strictly eco-friendly? How do you treat that in your business?
I prefer eco-friendly, but I try to approach all of my business in the way of that it's not about me, it's about what they want. And again, I can educate people on, the realities of burial and cremation and the options that they have. and then allow them to make the choices. But, I'm always an advocate on what's better for the environment just in my daily life. So that's why when I found out about green burials, I was so excited. I'm still hoping that maybe New Jersey will end up doing, the human composting or even aquamation, like some more options that are a little bit more on the green side. Because I mean, reality is too, even especially in New Jersey, we're going to run out of cemetery space. New Jersey is a very, very crowded state already. And so eventually we're going to have other options of what to do. And so I think it's great that there is more options. And I've been to Steelman Town. It is beautiful. I really fell in love with it when I went down there with my family, took the whole family, my kids, my mom, we toured around, we wandered around. And it was so beautiful. And I think that's the thing, is that people have never seen it in person. The only thing that they know is a traditional cemetery. And so I try to give them more education, but then in the long run, it's not about me. But I also find that people that are going to gravitate towards me and my services are probably going to be people that align with other things that I kind of believe in and agree with. So they're probably more on the green side already.
Absolutely. And all those individuals who are involved with bureaucracy or governmental agencies, listen to Jill. We need some more eco-friendly funeral options. Planting a tree every time you plant a human being, would be a very different world than the one we live in. So it can make a very positive impact. So no, that's great. And in that conversations that you do have with people, that maybe they were choosing a traditional burial, it doesn't take long to convince them of the merits of what we do, even just by having that simple conversation. And what's really exciting about today's call is, Jill, I want to say this to the viewers, Jill really does a lot of wonderful work. And anyone who watches our videos certainly would love what she does. So Jill, please tell the viewers a little bit about your podcast, what inspired its creation and what type of guests you have on. Can anyone be a guest to enlighten them? So, because I really love them to start to follow you.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. And so I started my podcast because early on, when you're starting a business, you talk to everybody, right? Anybody that's going to get on a phone call with you, you talk to them. And so I was having these really amazing conversations with people that were other business owners that, again, are maybe aligned with the type of work that I do. But then even out in public, I was talking to so many people that they would see maybe, my business name, End of Life Clarity, they would see it on my hoodie. And they'd come up to me and they'd say, well, what is that? And then they would tell me the stories of, their life and the people that they loved and the people that they lost and their grieving process and the whole thing. And the more I had these conversations, the more I was like, you know what? People need to hear these conversations because there's so much fear about talking about death and dying and grief. And yes, sometimes it's sad. I've cried with people on my podcast, but that doesn't mean that that's a bad thing. Sadness is not a bad thing. Tears are not a bad thing. But I've had some really, really beautiful conversations on my podcast. And again, it's a wide range of people. Literally anybody, if they want to be on my podcast, because they say, hey, I have a story I want to share. I love to talk to people that are not professionals, but I have had book authors. I've had, people that are in, medical aid and dying spaces. I've had other death doulas. I've had even Barbara Carnes, who to me, I was like a total fangirl because Barbara Carnes in the hospice world is she's like the big one in hospice. So when I had Barbara on my podcast, I was like totally fangirling over it. So I have had a wide range of people that have had all different experiences with death and dying and grief. But the main goal is to really show my listeners that this is a reality, this is part of life, and really that we can live a fuller life when we're okay with it, when we work through our fears and our anxieties, and when we prepare for it. And especially if you are grieving, a lot of times we don't grieve well. We kind of shut it down because society, in some ways, teaches us to shut it down. So I try to talk a lot about moving through our grief and processing our grief and how we'll actually live a better life when we could do those things. And so that's really kind of the basis of my podcast, is just allowing people to hear the conversations in a normal, natural way. And it's like the best compliment I get when somebody will say, listening to you talk about death is actually really calming. It's not scary. It's not overwhelming. Like the way that you talk about it is like calm and it's really, makes me feel good. And I'm like, that's amazing. That's what I want for people is to hear that and then say, oh, so I can do this myself. I can have the conversation with my spouse or my parents or my children and not avoid the topic like I've done basically my entire life.
Absolutely. No, I can completely relate. That's the absolute truth. And I encourage the viewers, follow Jill and be enlightened. You just may find yourself not only a fan, but someone who changes the way they may even think about death and dying. Jill, is there any particular experience that you'd like to share that captures the importance of your work? Anything that you've done maybe with a family or something very moving?
Oh my gosh, that's really hard to choose. Actually, probably one of the most ironic things in some ways is that I've worked with quite a few clients that actually had been given diagnosis of 6 months or less to live and are now still alive years later. And I'm not taking credit for it, but definitely some of the work that we've done together of getting clear on what's important to them and deciding on what treatments they want to do and helping them get prepared mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, they've outlived and they've lived better the amount of time that they have left. And one of the guys said to me, I never thought that dying would be so much fun because we were spending so much time together and telling stories and learning about each other and laughing and connecting. And I was helping get other people in to help with his care and really just working together. And he was supposed to die and he's still with us. And so it's really one of those things where more and more I believe that we don't have to have the end of life that most people witness of their loved ones if we can kind of do this work together and if we can prepare. And also as caregivers, we burn out because, again, I was the main caregiver for my grandmother. I didn't know to ask people, even for little things, like, can somebody just come over and help wash her clothes and fold them for me so that I can focus on bathing her, the more intimate parts of it? I didn't know that. So I was like pulling my hair out, trying to do everything without asking for help, even though people would say, oh, do you need anything? And I'm like, no, I'm fine. Because I was fine. I didn't even know what I needed. And so that's part of what I try to do with caregivers is like, let's get together. I call it like a pod map where, you get together different people in your circle that you can call on for different things, whether it's washing clothes. Again, maybe it's just coming in and like cleaning up an apartment or a house a little bit. Can you just dust? Can you vacuum? Can you do some of the things? Maybe you don't want to bathe the person. Maybe you don't want to be the person that's in there giving them their medications. That's okay. But there is people in your life that will do some of the other tasks. Again, we just don't know to ask for it. And so we can all have a better end of life experience, whether it's our own or with a loved one, if we had some tools and some education to be able to do it.
Absolutely. The power of positivity, and you're right. In life, some people are stubborn. I'm guilty of that myself. And it takes a village sometimes. So that's really, really good advice. And as we wrap up our show, Jill, do you have any advice for individuals who may be interested in getting involved in your type of work? I mean, what might you, how might you put them in the right direction, if I may, with some words?
Yeah, no, I get asked this question a lot of like, I want to be a death doula. How do I do it? And usually my first question that I ask somebody is, are you trying to make it into a business or do you just want to learn it to help care for the people around you? And for some people, that's the answer of like, no, I just want to help be, better at caring for my friends, my neighbors, my family. That's amazing. For sure. Take the death doula training, go through the process to learn what to do. Even if you want to just go into your community and educate your community, it's beautiful. Take death doula training. If you want to make it a business, it's a little bit harder. Right now, we're still at the point where I don't make enough money to survive off of being a death doula. It doesn't mean that I'm saying don't do it. I just say to people, make sure you have a job, make sure you have other ways of getting an income first, and then take your death doula training, go through setting up your website, go out and do the networking, do all the stuff. But just understand you're probably not going to make enough to live off of right now. And again, you're not going to just sit bedside with people. Originally that's kind of what I thought because I didn't know any better. I was like, I don't know, I guess I'm just going to sit with people that are dying. The bulk of my work is not that. It's really more the preparation and the education in the community and doing other things, designing the t-shirts, as a way to try to bring in some income to make the business sustainable. And when it comes to death doula trainings, there's so many of them out there right now, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. You could do weekend long trainings, you could do 6-month trainings. All of them basically offer a certificate. Right now, there's no overseeing body that kind of says you need to have this type of certification in order to be able to call yourself a death doula. Honestly, you could call yourself a death doula, but the trainings definitely will give you the information and the background that you need. And just look at a bunch of different ones, research them, really talk to people. I'm in a like Facebook group that's like all death doulas. And there's people that say, hey, I want to do my training. And then talk to the people that did different trainings. All of them have different things that they specialize in. So find the one that feels right for you, because some are going to be more spiritual, some are going to be less spiritual. It's going to be more on the practical preparation. It's whatever you want. So research them, reach out to other death doulas and talk to them, see what they like about the different trainings that they've done. But there is going to be more and more of a need for it. I'm confident that eventually we'll get to the point where we can make a living off of it. But really, right now we're not quite there, and that doesn't mean don't do it. I just try to make sure that I am realistic with people about the realities of the business right now.
Absolutely. And, good karma, good things come to those who wait. At some point you will, this will become the norm, in my personal opinion. So very, very wise words. Thank you, Jill, for that. So for my viewers here at the Global Green Burial Alliance, please do support Jill and the wonderful work she does. Check out her apparel. Like she had mentioned, some of these, like even our Destination Destiny memorials, people think that is something like, oh, is that a vacation spot? Until we tell them. And but it creates conversations. So,
Yeah.
you do great, great work. You can learn more by visiting endoflifeclarity.com. And we really appreciate the support. And thanks for being on today, Jill.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ed. I'm looking forward to having you on my podcast soon.
I'm looking forward to that as well. Thank you, Jill. So everybody, this is the Global Green Burial Alliance Spotlight now. See you at the next one.